Hello, Wellness Warriors. Welcome to Mind Blowing Mondays. And today I'm talking about whether or not we have just let food companies sell us things that are making us unhealthy. And, I wanted to start it off by talking about some things that I've noticed over the course of years. And the first thing I want to point out is we have normalized being overweight. And in a very different way than it used to happen back in our history. So, way back, rich people were happy to be kind of plump and less muscular because it was a sign that they were rich and they didn't need to work. They didn't need to lift heavy things or move things around. They had people to do that for them. And we're going back far back into the future, into the history, right? That was a sign of status. Versus, I feel like today, it's more a case of denial, because today, doctors, scientists, researchers, it has become very apparent that muscle is what allows us to be healthy and strong, and that, especially for women, apparently for some reason, women with more muscle live longer. But yet, when you really talk to people, especially women, it's very often that I will talk to women who don't want to have muscle, who want to be thin and muscle, practically muscleless. And the question is, well, why? And it's this weird thing we have where we feel like being muscular would make us masculine. But in fact, being muscular just means that you're healthy. So then I think it feeds this denial, right? Because we're trying to look a certain way. But the way that we're trying to look is so difficult to achieve, because now let's look at what I'm doing. I'm going to be thin and I'm going to be very low in muscle, but yet I want to be healthy. How am I going to accomplish all those things? Well, the only way I can really do that is to be eating really limited amounts of food, right? Because as soon as I start to eat properly, my body's going to build muscle, because if I'm moving around at a reasonable amount, my body's going to build muscle. If I'm not moving around at a reasonable amount, but I'm eating food, my body's going to gain weight. So I do feel like there's a denial scenario that's happening there, where we just, as a society, have given up on this idea that we could be healthy, strong people. And so part of it too is we work in scenarios where, if I think about myself, I spend so much time sitting at a desk. Now, it's more today than it was 2 years ago, because I'm doing a lot of video stuff with my work. But even before that, I would sit at my desk, and then I would walk around to sit with whomever I was speaking to, and then I would come back and sit at my desk, and that's not a lot of exercise. I'm doing 5-10 feet. So the other thing is that we don't realize that if we're not moving a lot, do we have to make time for it? So again, there's this denial that we live where we've moved forward so far in our evolution that we have so much technology that we don't realize that the basic stuff that we used to do to get food, for example, whether it was hunting the animal or being out in the fields, it was still very strenuous work. And it was being done by everybody, because getting food used to be our full-time job. It's not anymore. It's well from that now. But when it was our full-time job, that was all we were doing, and it was causing us to work really hard. So that's part one of what I wanted to put out there to you guys, is think about the denial that we live in, that it's okay to just be overweight because, well, first of all, we don't need to be that strong. But second of all, it's just normalized. It's everybody's overweight. Everybody looks like me, so it's okay. The other thing that came to me is that second piece of the puzzle is food so easily available. So again, we don't have to work really hard to get food. We have to work hard for money to buy food, but it's a different kind of work, and it doesn't take the muscle. It doesn't take the strength. I was outside for a grand total of probably 10 minutes looking at my bushes and like, oh, I should trim them and I didn't do it. Like, it was hot and I think back on that today and it's like, well, if that was the way that I was going to get food, would I have starved? But I can just go to the grocery store and grab something, out of the freezer and bring it home so I don't need to work that hard to eat anymore. And so I wouldn't put out that energy for food. Am I going to put it out so my bush looks pretty? Especially if I'm overheating and not comfortable. And I feel like, again, we are not used to working hard for what we're going to eat. And healthy food is available. That's the part that's such a frustration to me, is that I could equally, so let's go back in my history. When I was overweight, I easily could have gone to the store and bought healthy vegetables and healthy meats and cooked them up and eaten them, and they would have been better for my health than the fast, quick cereals and all the junk foods that I was eating. I was eating because I was eating cereal. I was eating microwavable meals, and I was eating processed foods when whole foods were available. And although I do realize that there are some parts of the world where whole foods are not available, in the United States they call them food deserts, which I think I'm not talking about that because that's a manipulation that's happening in the United States that doesn't need to be there, because we can build cities with grocery stores in them. We have the ability to do that. It's just not being done. But when we're talking about, I, Violet, went into the store with all the choice in the world and walked out with my basket full of frozen and processed things rather than fresh things. That was Violet making a choice and a decision that was poor. And I want us to think about that because we don't have to make that decision a lot of the times. And most of us who are making that decision can afford to make different decisions. Like, I sincerely was able to afford to make different decisions, and I was making the wrong one. Now, companies, of course, profit from Violet making the wrong decision, right? And why was I making that decision? I was making that decision out of laziness. I wanted to get home and not have to make too much time in the kitchen. So I wanted the convenience. And I didn't realize that the convenience of eating within 10 to 15 minutes was leading to the inconvenience of sore joints, the inconvenience of declining health, the inconvenience of potentially being on medication for the last half of my life. And I really want every wellness warrior to start thinking about the fact that it's actually quite inconvenient to be on medication, to be sick, to be unhealthy. I want every wellness warrior to understand that that's a bad situation to be in. And it's not convenient. We need to understand that there's a difference between saving time and prioritizing a time benefit over a health benefit. I definitely love to save time in the kitchen. And I figured out ways to save time in the kitchen today where I'm still cooking a healthy meal. And I'm using good quality ingredients. And I'm using healthy ingredients. And as I've mentioned multiple times, it's even easier for me today, I'll be honest with you, because since I'm only eating meat because I'm in month 2 of doing carnivore, it's really easy to just make some meat. But even when I was eating veg 2 months ago, it wasn't that hard. It was a matter of just deciding what veg I was going to have and how I was going to have it, and knowing a little bit in advance if I needed to be in the kitchen for that extra 10 minutes. And honestly, wellness warriors, can I just point out that to feel how I feel today, the 10 minutes is worth it. To know that I can run around and do what I want to do. We went on vacation recently and I was able to run around and keep up, and I wasn't holding everybody back. And that's cool, right? And I want you guys to have that good experience. So the other thing that caused me, anyways, I'll talk about myself, to not be cooking as much as it. So choosing convenience foods over whole foods was the idea that cooking was intimidating. And like, so first of all, my dad's a chef. But besides my dad being a chef, my mom's a great cook. And I never felt like I was as good of a cook as, first of all, the two of them. But add to that, when you watch television programming that's about cooking, they're not making supper, like just like a normal supper that's just like, hey, we're making pot roast. It's like these beautiful 3-course, 4-course, 5-course meals and grilled perfectly or broiled, just everything. And I remember just feeling like, wow, I'm not cooking that way. I still don't cook that way. Now, I don't try to cook that way today, but I do remember thinking like, that's a lot of work. And again, I'm kind of lazy in the kitchen. I don't care enough to make my plate look like that. And so the intimidation factor, I think, can be there for a lot of people. But the other problem that I see is like, why is cooking such an important piece of the puzzle for everyone? Well, first of all, it's important because we need to stay alive. But second of all, for the longest time, it's less the case today. I will 100% say that. It's like very much less the case today. But for the longest time, if you were in a household, the wife, mother, woman of the house was the one making the meal. And that was all falling on my shoulders. And so not only was it intimidating to me, but it was a chore, a job, one more bit of work that I had to do at the end of the day. And honestly, I didn't want more work at the end of my day. Now, I mean, I think it's obvious that when you're finished your work day, most people do not want to come home and work some more. And it's unfortunate in our society. A lot of these things used to fall on ladies' shoulders. I think it's evening out now. I know my dad did a lot around the house, and that was a great example for me, but I still ended up, you end up meeting people out in the world who they didn't have the household that I grew up in and expected Violet to do all. And so I feel like I walked into that story with this idea of that's not how my growing up house was. And I definitely didn't want it to be how my new home was going to be with whomever. And so this idea that Violet was going to do all the cooking, Violet was going to do all the cleaning, Violet was going to do, that was not a story that I was interested in. But I feel like because it wasn't a story that I was interested in, even when I was single, I didn't invest in cooking for me. And I think that was a huge mistake. Like, I really should have invested in cooking for me when I was single. So another thing that in there that I feel like we need to be aware of what things might be pushing us to behave in ways that are against our health. And rejecting cooking as a woman's job meant that I rejected cooking for myself. And honestly, I cooked for my daughter because she couldn't cook for herself. But if it was for me, I was much less likely to cook. And that led to these convenience foods being in my house that really shouldn't be there. It also led to my daughter sometimes getting used to eating convenience foods, which now, right, that we're trying to resolve. But all of these things add up. And I feel like when we don't see cooking as normal to keep me healthy, we're not going to do it. And I want all of us to see cooking as the normal thing we do to keep ourselves healthy so that we will do it, right? And we will do it every day, which is what I do now, believe it or not. I cook every day or almost every day. Sometimes I'll cook enough and I'll have enough for the next day. But I'm very comfortable if I cook what I think is going to be for 2 days and my daughter comes in and says, oh, that's delicious, and she eats it all, then I'll just cook more the next day. And I don't get frustrated by that anymore like I used to. And I think it comes back to changing the mindset around how we see what we're doing and opening up to this idea that healthy things can be annoying. They can be tedious, but if they make me feel better, they're worth doing. And if I can find a way to make it fun, that's terrific too. I'll admit, in the summer, grilling things, I do find that more interesting. Again, I can put some meat on the machine, go away, come back, flip it, go away, come back, eat it. I find that much more fun to do, and it feels like less of a chore. You're outside, it's nice out, if it's not too hot. So, Wellness Warriors, I want to jump into the questions now. I really hope that that was an interesting understanding of how I've been thinking about this whole food thing for myself, and maybe it gets you guys to start thinking and seeing cooking a little differently.